Luke took a moment to breathe and noticed he had taken more damage than he had thought. The metal greaves of his suit were warped and their surfaces bore a thick carbonized layer. One of his pauldrons had been partially melted smooth. The orange warning light on his back had been blasted off entirely, his right thigh plate had a deep gouge from its surface, and the entire suit was pockmarked from projectile impacts that had dulled the high-vis decals and hazard strips. Other than that, however, he was alive. That's when he noticed a tall alien with white armour and a crested helmet striding towards him. He turned to it and fired the plasma pistol at it, but the shot splashed over a silvery, scintillating energy barrier that covered its entire body. The alien lifted a large crimson weapon and fired a soccer ball-sized blob of energy directly at him. He couldn't move in time. The projectile impacted his chest, and before he knew what was happening, he was airborne and flying backwards. He struck a polycrete wall beneath the major support column where the 3 civilians were still hiding and passed straight through it. In a sea of shattered polycrete and dust, he continued gliding for a few more meters before smashing into the asphalt of the adjacent parking lot. The impact knocked the wind out of him, and he tensed against it, leaving him dazed. This caused him to squeeze the grip of the plasma pistol, which built up a growing charge of plasma at its tip. He noticed the increasing brightness of the weapon, and it began to shake in his hand, so he released the grip. A large, boiling bolt of green plasma lanced across the parking lot and struck a vehicle, instantly igniting it and turning its broadside into molten slag. He shook off the disorientation and looked to the hole he had just created in the wall to see the tall, white-armoured alien approach the civilians as they tried to climb through the hole to escape.
No, wait, please!
This elite-statured alien grabbed one of the civilians by the neck, its hand large enough to almost completely wrap around their head, and lifted them off the ground. The other 2 were barely visible, cowering in front of it just below the edge of the hole. The alien stood still, slightly cocking its multi-mandibled head to the side as if understanding him.
Please, they're civilians, they're unarmed.
He let the plasma pistol slip from his grasp and, sitting up,
Look, I'm unarmed. See, we're not soldiers. We don't want to fight. We don't have to fight. Whatever it is you want, you can have it. Just let them go. Let them go free. And you can have this planet. We'll leave. I don't understand. I can't understand you. I don't speak your language. What is it that you want? Tell me what you want and we'll get it for you. Just don't hurt them.
The alien stepped closer to the hole and spoke, this time, in deep, guttural English.
We want only one thing.
Tell me, what is it? What do you want?
The alien's mandibles splayed like an impossibly wide grin that Luke instinctively knew wasn't meant to be reassuring.
Your complete destruction.
At that, the alien squeezed the person it was holding, and even from this distance, he heard their neck snap. The 2 stood on the ground in front of it, screamed and tried clawing through the hole as the alien threw the limp body of its captive aside, and twin shards of blue energy coalesced from a chrome device it held in its right hand. It lifted the blades of the energy sword high into the air as Luke shouted.
No!
He rolled, grabbed the plasma pistol once more and squeezed the grip, which began collecting an ever-growing ball of green plasma at its tip. He turned back to the hole as the alien swung the sword, cutting both humans in half at the waist, and scoring a molten slash directly through the wall. Luke turned the glowing charge of the plasma pistol towards the alien and let the bolt go. A huge discharge of plasma impacted the edge of the hole and splashed across the alien, causing its shields to flare and pop out of existence. It stumbled backward out of view. He started breathing again, taking gasping breaths to recover. The smouldering plasma had heavily scorched the polycrete. At this moment, a large crash echoed across the area, and he looked up to see a large section of the superstructure of the elevator falling clear. It smashed over the top of the support column and both disintegrated under the impact. The superstructure groaned in response and began leaning towards the failure. Luke, still partially winded, rolled, stood, and began running across the parking lot, heading directly for the city streets again. Behind him, the ever-loudening crescendo of falling superstructure chased him all the way to the city. Large sections of debris showered him, striking the suit in several places. It must have hit something critical because the suit sounded some pressure alarms and he no longer had full control over his left arm. Rubble the size of houses smashed into the parking lot, pancaking cars beneath them. Ahead he saw several warning lights and traffic signals spark to life, showing him the best route away from the docks. He kept running, throwing himself through the security fence like it wasn't even there, as the sound behind him grew deafening, a constant staccato drum roll he felt in his chest as the space tether's superstructural foundations tore themselves apart. He cleared the encircling street and continued running a full city block away from the tether before the sound of chaos behind him finally abated. He came to a staggered stop as one of his right knee servos seized up, leaving him operating on just one. He performed a limping turn, his left arm hanging limp by his side, and looked back to the dock. Several streetlights nearby sparked to life, dimly lighting the area around him. Back towards the tether, nothing was visible through the dust, but one thing was certain. The space tether was no longer standing. The alien ship that had fired on the tether had now descended to a few hundred meters above the skyline of the city, its underside now accumulating an immense amount of energy and heat that evaporated the cloud cover surrounding it for a kilometre in every direction. Through the hole it had created, he could see the clear night sky, occasionally punctuated with distant explosions high above the atmosphere. The ship was now emanating a horrible whine as it discharged a pillar of red-white energy from its belly that smashed into the city below it. The northern quadrant was falling. In the rising field of debris where the beam met the skyline, Luke could see smoke, fire, and buildings literally sagging, folding in on themselves and collapsing under the immense heat as the ship began slowly flying forward, dragging the all-consuming beam across the city floor, carving a scorched, molten wound upon the earth. Something could be said of the wealthy quadrant of the city being the first to be wiped out, but the motivations that would once have driven such remarks had been dulled by the horrors he had seen. Luke could do nothing but watch as the ship moved out of view. A string of code winked on its HUD, and the voice of the AI Hades spoke over his helmet speakers.
They have begun glassing the city. They will not stop until the entire city, and indeed the planet itself, is molten. It will soon no longer be possible to survive on the surface. You must make your way underground.
Luke, now almost passive and numb to the horror he was witnessing, coldly replied.
Okay. But it's gonna take a while, my suit's damaged.
Please stand by.
A flurry of code appeared on the HUD as Hades activated bypasses and redundancies, rerouted some of the failed components, and reiterated the suit's software system. Luke felt the seized knee servo relent, an action which came at a surprise enough to cause him to drop to a knee. He pivoted and brought his left knee down as well, now in a tall kneel, buffeted by the structural limits of his suit's armor plating. His left arm shuddered as a secondary system engaged and reactivated it. He flexed his hands and let them both come to rest on his lap before taking a deep breath and slowly releasing it, dropping his shoulders and letting his helmeted head rock forward until the armor of his chin nested behind the lip of his chest plate. Hades then began speaking once more.
I have gotten your suit partially functional once more. The damage is significant, but it will hold for now. Please, follow my directions so we can get you away from danger.
Why?
Luke flatly replied.
The city is being glassed. Nothing will survive this process. The only bastion for safety is underground.
No, I mean, why bother?
Hades remained quiet.
The tether's down. Evac stations are probably damaged, destroyed, overrun. Any ships leaving the city are getting shot down. We're not getting out of here.
Luke thought of all the things that had happened in the past few hours. He should have realised what was happening sooner, got his mum sooner. He should have been more careful, not waited to catch his breath, just kept going. Even if he'd been with her in the apartment when the massive aliens fired upon it, at least she wouldn't have been alone.
We're not getting out of here. What hope is left? What are the odds of getting out of here? What can I possibly do to stop what's happening?
Even if he couldn't have changed any of that, he should have immediately headed to his evac station.
We're not
What if he hadn't have been so keen to clock out at the moment his shift ended?
getting out of
Would he
here.
have been close enough to work to get off the planet before the containers collapsed and pinned the elevator pods? He should have picked up a weapon sooner, used it sooner. He should have helped the survivors escape first. A million thoughts filled his mind with so much noise he couldn't hear what Hades had said in response. His calls were muffled and distant in the haze of his spiraling thoughts.
We're We're not getting out of here. We're not getting out of here. We're not getting out of here. We're not getting out of here.
Luke?
The use of his first name caught his attention and brought him back to the moment.
Luke?
This voice wasn't Hades, but it was a voice he knew.
Luke? Nothing's happening. I don't know how long we got. So I need you to remember. Trust your gut. Something's wrong. It usually is. Listen to it. Never that you're wrong. Look at the signs. They're pointing to who you're supposed to be. Never forget. Hope is never lost. As long as we can keep moving forward, there is always hope.
Luke shook his head, not truly believing the words his mother's voice just spoke to him.
That isn't her, is it?
Luke said as more of a statement.
It was. Her last words, in fact. It's still partially corrupted. She wasn't aware I could hear her, but I could. I heard, and I knew that at some point, you'd need to hear it too.
You still haven't told me why you helped her so much. Why you're helping me.
My primary directive at this time is the preservation of human life.
It doesn't answer my question.
I cannot say, but I may be able to show you.
Luke sighed deeply and almost defeatedly replied.
Okay. Show me.
Hades didn't reply. He withdrew from the suit systems and a shop window sign sparked to life next to him, displaying green arrows pointing further into the city. Luke noticed, looked back to the tether, nodded and stood, the grunting responding to him like a second skin. He turned, gazing at the deep, dominating shadow his suit cast onto the ground, lingering on it for a moment, before moving off down the street, following the signs Hades laid out for him. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters, Spartan10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors, Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors, Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.